Yesterday, a local pole barn contractor stopped by and spent about 3 hours with us, just talking through our build strategy, offering his guidance on how he builds and how he would apply his best practices to our structure. Ours is different than most of the structures up here, but a lot of the principles apply. It is still a post frame building. I'm amazed at how welcoming the community is here. We moved to this community as outsiders. Yes, from the state, but not from this local area. And this is a very small town, and everyone has been so helpful, so welcoming, and has really invited us into their community. And that's been fantastic. One of the nice pieces of evidence of that is a local contractor spending 3 hours on a Saturday, just giving us advice, not expecting anything in return, just helping out a neighbor. And that's just so fantastic. It's really one of the things that we were looking for. You know, moving to the woods, you're afraid that you're going to be isolated, that you're never going to see anyone, but what it does is it makes the connections that you do have even more important. I feel like we've had nothing but positive experiences. In 3 hours, he validated some of our strategies and, on the other hand, offered alternatives to some of the others that we were more concerned about. Let me give you an example. He thinks it's a great idea to start with this far sidewall for the lean-to and use this then to brace the main pole barn wall. That's something we came up with, and he really likes it because this guy isn't too tall to stand on its own, and with proper bracing, it'll shore up the big wall here, really helping out the rest of the build. But something different is he feels like it's best to start, as you see here, by putting the posts up. Get them, you know, plumb and accurate, and then girt them where they stand. But to start, it is literally 3 girts. Not a huge deal. He thinks the whole building should be done that way, and I feel more comfortable doing it like this. These are a few more of his suggestions, is to put them in place and put the 4 legs in before we bolt straight through it. So get all the girts connected, make sure everything is braced and plumb and perfectly square, and at that point put the big bolts in. So this guy's already up. I'll show you some of the detail over here. The first step to doing it is I'm caulking it, and I'm putting down a little sill plate thing to take up some of the extra space around the edges. So I'm caulking along the edges, plopping down some pink foam and caulking around that. It gives it a nice surface to set the post on, and it should lift the post up a little bit off the concrete should we ever get water puddling in these areas. Second, I've been putting on this little brace board with just 2 deck screws into the sill plates here. And this gives us a nice straight surface to rest the post against while we screw it in. It also gives us a nice surface that we can set the level on so we can check for plumb. All the girts are up, and we took the next very important step, which was squaring everything. The far east post here was perfectly plumb, and we didn't have to do anything. In addition, this post was plumb. So all I did was take a 22-foot 2x4 and screwed it into the top, middle, and bottom of this post. And then I hit a couple of the 2x6 girts between, because why not? And my gosh, that firmed up everything in the east-west plane nicely. Unfortunately, things weren't as lovely on the west side here because this guy was twisted. And the twist was creating some pretty healthy gaps between the post and the girt. And those gaps were enough to send this out about 1/4 inch on the top. So we spent a while with this guy here. We'd clamp it onto the post and then just like pull on it really hard, twisting the post so that we could try to take up some of the slack. At that point, I started embedding some structural screws into it to kind of grab it. So a few of these guys here are heavily laden with metal, but it closed all the gaps and picked up that extra 1/4 inch. Now they're perfectly plumb, and we were able to do the same thing up here by attaching this long 2x4 diagonally. These diagonal 2x4s are temporary, and I just attached them with deck screws, so no big deal. Once the roof is on and the purlins are on, then this should be rock solid and we can take off these temporary braces. But for now, they will stay because we need this guy to stay square. And it is beautifully square right now. I hope the rest of the wall stays this square. I also hope we don't have to twist posts, because that kind of sucked. My next step is to finish everything down here on the brackets. So as you can see, we do have a gap on one side and a bevel on the other. So I want to shim this gap. So I'm going to go run and get some pressure treated plywood of various thicknesses and cut it to shape and basically pound it into that gap. And then we'll re-screw, relag, and get it nice and solid, just to shore this up and make sure there's no movement whatsoever. But once those guys are in, we'll check our north-south plumb, and I will drill and bolt, and we'll be quote-unquote done with this far north wall. It came together very fast. Framing is nice. With this wall complete, we're ready to move on to the next wall. This guy has 16-foot tall posts. The 16-foot is measured from the pocket here, which is where the truss will be resting. This is post 15, which is right behind me there. And that bracket is 3/8 inch low, so we're gonna have to add an extra 3/8 of an inch to the 16-foot. Nice, these are done. The trusses will set on that saddle there, and they'll be nailed straight through or bolted straight through at some point. Up here is our overhang, a structural piece. So this will go all the way across. It'll also be the quote-unquote last purlin, I guess. But that'll lock everything together quite nicely once the trusses are on. These do have all kinds of nails. I cut myself pretty good on one of these. And, you know, note to self, wear gloves. Anyway, I'm gonna take a grinder and remove this to some degree, just because they'll catch us again if we don't remove them. I thought I finished all the posts up yesterday, but I realized this morning that I have one more cut to do. It is an inset onto the end posts that the rafter can sit in, the end rafters that support the lean-tos. So it's not a big deal. I'm just going to be removing one of the 2x, enough to accept a 2x8. I was a bit torn on what to do next. I'd finished the 5 posts that go on the northern side of the building. And I thought, you know, hey, since my mind is on these posts, I might as well do the 5 on the southern part of the main building. So I did. All 5 are complete, cut to length. So all the lengths are custom based on the bracket height. The ends have the rafter slots in them. All the tops have the truss locations. With the end posts, the truss is on the end, and the center 3 posts, the truss is on the center. They've all got the top beveled out so we can get our overhang support sorted on there. Next step is to mark the girt locations. We've got them all lined up on this top part, and I'll get a tape measure and just start marking the 24 on centers. It's a nice visual indicator that we're attaching our girts correctly, and if anything moves, toenails are kind of messy. If they move, and then it becomes pretty obvious that things have slid. We've investigated various aspects of wind bracing for this barn. The standard is a 1x4 that goes from the upper corner down to the next anchor point, which on a house would be the sill plate. In a post frame would be the following post. You can also do it with metal strapping, like steel strapping, either flat straps or stuff shaped like an L bracket or a T bracket that goes from corner to corner or creates an X pattern. There's so many options. We're not even sure if we need wind bracing. We are going to be sheathing in a way that is signed off as code compliant. That might be enough for this barn, just in case we're adding diagonal bracing in addition to the normal sheathing. We got one piece up today. It goes from this post up to the corner here. It's toenailed into each with I think 16D nails or 10D nails. I think 10D. We cut out each of the girts here so that it goes flat into the girts, and sunk a couple ring shank 10D nails into that as well. It looks pretty good. It'll do the job. I think we're gonna do this for the rest of the barn. This was kind of an experiment in this back corner to see if we liked the process and thought it was reasonable for the rest of the barn. So we're gonna do it. Some areas where there's doors and windows, it gets a little tricky because with a door, you can't really cross brace at all. Something's better than nothing, and I think it's all redundant with respect to the sheathing anyway, so let's put this one up and see how it looks. This turned out pretty good, all things considered. Nice and tight on the bottom, fits pretty snug here. Not much of a lip, should pull tight with some nails. Nice. So that works. I think we have to find an easier way to do it though. I mean, it took a long time just to cut through 3 girts, hitting the ends with the circular saw, then carving it with a jigsaw, and then finishing off everything with a handsaw. That's a lot of cuts just to nest a 2x4 into a girt. We got to figure out an easier way to do it. We'll see. We're trying to figure it out as we go.